Welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm your host, Hilmarie Hutchison. Today I am thrilled to welcome Caroline Bakker. She's a mindfulness meditation teacher, personal trainer, holistic health coach, and author, all based right here in Dubai. Caroline has helped thousands of people worldwide through their guided meditations on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, and Inside Timer. She's also the author of the upcoming book, The Healing Journey, Navigating Adult ADHD and PMDD, where she shares holistic strategies for mental health and personal growth. I can't wait to hear more about her inspiring journey and insights. Caroline, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to have a conversation.
To start off, Caroline, could you tell us a little bit about your background, your journey, and how you ended up here in Dubai?
Yes, I'm a bit of a world traveler. In 2009, I moved from my home country, the Netherlands, to Australia. I was only supposed to do one exchange semester at the university there. But I fell in love so much with the country that I decided to apply for a permanent residency and stay there for a while. So I ended up spending 7 years in Queensland, or 8 years in Queensland, and another 5 years in Melbourne, Victoria. And it was only just about a year ago that we decided to make the big move and move away from the colder weather and get started in Dubai.
So you can hear in your accent, actually, you've got that Dutch and Australian twang going on. So excellent. How did you get into mindfulness, to become a mindfulness meditation teacher, personal trainer, holistic health? How did this come about?
Yeah, so naturally, I've always been someone that's very curious about life, about health, about how we move, how we breathe, what we eat, and all those things in between. And it was when I moved to the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia, that I realized that everybody that was walking around on the Sunshine Coast, that they were all very fit and tanned and healthy. I realized that's something I wanted to aspire to be, because at the time, I didn't feel very comfortable in my own body and my own skin. I was still working out who I was, finding my place in this world. And so I started to actually learn from a housemate of mine about fitness. I started going to a group fitness class. I fell in love with boxing, from doing 1 class a week to 2 classes a week to 3 to eventually 4 classes a week, or sometimes 5 times a week. I would train with the group and had so much fun. And along that journey, when you start your fitness journey, it's not so much about movement and physical activity, but more so about finding yourself and learning about nutrition, mindfulness, all of those things that sort of tie in. So from one thing came the next, and I loved it that much. I ended up getting a really good bond with my fitness coach, Amanda Buchanan. She's a female world champion kickboxer. And we ended up doing some fitness events together. Like we did a Oxfam 100K hike, which is a epic event where you complete a 100-kilometer hike. And our goal was to complete it in under 24 hours. So that was really good. And so I picked up more boxing, more fitness and exercise. And I even ended up doing 2 amateur boxing fights as well, under the watchful eye of Amanda. And through Amanda, I met one of her good friends, Sue Stanley, who's actually in Melbourne, who ended up becoming a good friend of ours. But through her, I ended up doing the certificate 3 and 4 in fitness, because I realized that I loved fitness that much that I really wanted to get into this. And so I decided to become certified and take that up as my career. Even though, I did not study fitness at uni, I just did a Bachelor of Business. I realized I love fitness that much. That's what I wanted to do with my life. And from one thing comes the next. So
wow, so quite a progression. So from just an interest from observing others being healthy and fit to seeing that this is something that really resonated with you, you wanted this to become part of your life. And clearly your bachelor's degree wasn't wasted, because once you start your own business, having that background in business and understanding how a business operates and how to run it, that would be very valuable. You're able to then bring both these skills together to run your own businesses. Absolutely fantastic. So it was a progression for you getting into the fitness side, the boxing side. So then how did you get into the mindfulness side of things?
I'm someone that can't really sit still, and meditation used to frustrate me so much. But then COVID hit, and at the time I was still doing some part-time work at one of the gyms where I provided guided stretching sessions to the clients there. And during those sessions, I would feel very calm. I would guide them at the end of the session to do meditation as well. It's just something that came to me naturally. But during COVID, I decided to really make it a profession and upskill myself. So I decided to do a course on mindfulness meditation teachings. And I really loved it that much. And I actually completed the course, which is very good because over the years, I've started many courses that I haven't finished. And many other women with ADHD will probably recognize that. So for me, I was very happy to have completed that course. And then from there, like many other people during COVID, they needed something to do. And I felt really called to start creating guided meditations to offer them online. So that's how I started, from just really loving it to making it my profession. And at the moment, still to this day, it's still a passion. I see it as a hobby. It's not something that pays the bills, but it's something that I really love doing because I feel I have a gift for creating. Like when I have a conversation with a client, for example, I'm able to put into words what kind of healing meditation they actually need. It started off with just publishing on Spotify, but now I'm very grateful to have my content on Spotify as well as YouTube, as well as an app called Insight Timer, which has like millions of teachers and students on there to share the journey of mindfulness and meditation.
That's fantastic. And I so resonate when you said that you found it hard to meditate in the beginning. And I guess with you, because you were leading others in the guided stretching, and then that slowly got you into the meditation and built up your enjoyment of it, I guess is how you would describe it, because I find it really, really difficult to meditate. Amazing that you went from somebody who found it difficult to meditate to somebody who now has found so much value in it. This is something that you do for others as well.
You're right there in saying like it was hard back then and it's still hard, but I guess it was just a mindset change and something that I learned during the course. Meditation is not about emptying your mind. Meditation is about becoming at peace with what's going on in the mind. And when I learned that, everything changed for me because all of a sudden I was able to notice and to witness what was going on. And like you mentioned, guiding others is such a powerful way of doing it yourself, but also learning and growing and sharing that together.
I love that. That's excellent. Yes, I think it's the needing to show up for someone else or help others that helps you then to get into that. But I love also that you said it's a mindset change, right? So many things in our lives, it's the way we view things that impact the way we show up for it. Our mindset plays such an important part. It's so important in how we approach things, how we view things, and how we show up for things. So I love that you said that you needed that mindset change. So let's shift gears to your upcoming book, The Healing Journey. I mentioned it in the intro as well. Navigating Adult ADHD and PMDD. What inspired you to write the book, and why is this topic so close to your heart?
So this is another one of my passion projects, one that's close to my heart because I've lived it and breathed it. So for many people, the title might be a little bit full on. The Healing Journey obviously explains it's a journey of healing, but the book is about navigating adult ADHD, and especially for women. And PMDD is a condition called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is something I've dealt with as well. So I've been struggling both with ADHD and PMDD. However, I only recently found out, a couple of months back actually, that I did indeed struggle with symptoms of ADHD because I had no idea. First of all, there's not enough education about there for women, and especially for adult women, about ADHD. I just happened to pick up a book. It was Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Mate. I actually picked a book because I love what he's about. He's very known for his trauma work and addiction work. And one of the books I've previously read by Dr. Gabor Mate is Hold On to Your Kids. And that's a book when I became a mom 2 years ago. So that was a book that I really enjoyed reading. And from that, I just thought, I'll get his next book. It's a new book. The cover looks beautiful. Maybe it was an impulse buy, maybe it wasn't. But at the end of the day, I'm very glad that I did end up purchasing that book because as I read through it, it literally was like the puzzle pieces were coming together and falling into place. Because many women with ADHD, they don't even realize they've got ADHD until they become. For example, I'm 35 years old this year, and it's only now that I've realized, I'm actually a little bit scatterbrained. I'm a bit unorganized sometimes. I can have severe emotional mood swings. I can be short-tempered, but I can also hyperfocus, which means that I can focus on one project for a very long time uninterruptedly. And I can just work on that and work on that and work on that. Forget to move, forget to eat, forget to drink. And that's basically how my book, The Healing Journey, came about. Because it turns out when you have both ADHD and PMDD, that the symptoms get amplified. And that's when finally everything started to make sense. And the beauty of having a diagnosis is always that you can think, okay, now I know what's going on. What's the prognosis? What can you do about it in order to, I suppose, heal and manage the symptoms? And that's what this book is about. It is about my journey, how I've uncovered what I've uncovered, to the holistic strategies that I've implemented, researched, found out about in order for me to live a healthier and happier life whilst managing the symptoms.
Fantastic. Now let's unpack that a little bit. For our audience, and for me, can you explain a little bit about ADHD and also PMDD so we know what we're talking about?
Yeah, so ADHD is commonly known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So this is a disorder that many kids might be diagnosed with in schools nowadays. Back in the day when I was at school, not many people would have, you'd have one kid in the classroom that would have ADHD, that would struggle to sit down, that would struggle to just, be fidgeting, restless, very active. And then you have the condition PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is a condition in women that happens during the luteal phase of your period, of your cycle, which is generally the last 2 weeks leading up to, before your period starts. And during this time, I'm just speaking from my own experience, is when I would experience severe mood swings, depression, my eyes would get really foggy. I would just not be answering any of my phone calls, my messages. I literally wanted to live under a rock for 2 weeks of the month because I didn't feel good in myself. I was not very nice to my husband. I just, wanted to be alone. I didn't want to be around people. I just felt awful. And as I got older, it got worse.
How is it diagnosed?
So there's various ways to go about it, but what I describe in my book is a journey of my healing. So I've self-diagnosed, which is something that aligns with my values. If someone suspects they have ADHD and or PMDD, first thing would be to visit your GP, your general practitioner, your doctor, to go and talk to them and talk to them about it. There's both conditions, both ADHD and PMDD are officially recognized conditions and there are official treatment plans available. But my journey felt that my intuition told me that I needed to go the holistic path. I did not want to go on medications because, for example, for ADHD, very often Ritalin or Vyvanse are prescribed. For PMDD, very often what happens is they prescribe a birth control in order to help the hormonal fluctuations. Neither of which is something that aligns with my values because I believe in root cause healing, which is healing from the root. For example, when you give a child Ritalin or Vyvanse, the child is not actually Ritalin deficient because what happens in the body, if you were to do a blood test and a DNA test, which is what I ended up doing, you would actually uncover there are deficiencies in the body. And it's once you start addressing those deficiencies that you actually start healing. And that's been part of my journey as well.
I love that you decided to go the natural way of finding out what it is that your body actually needs rather than relying on medication. Of course, there must be a time and a place for everything. But I think if you can go the natural route, at least as a start, to be sure your body knows how to heal itself if you can give it the right things. I love that you've taken this approach. In the news, you also hear more and more a rise in the number of children diagnosed with ADHD. Is that because more children now have ADHD, or is it because we are now getting better at recognizing the symptoms in children?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with both of them, because yes, we do see more children that have been diagnosed with ADHD, but it's also often in relation to the diets, the processed foods, the high sugar contents that children tend to have nowadays versus many years ago. all these processed foods were not available. But then also I think it's important to look at more adult women are becoming more aware of ADHD. It's also because there's more, people are talking about it more. It's not as much a taboo as what it used to be. There's so much content and information available online that you can find. There's even Google Doctor, which is not something I'd recommend. I know people that do it. You type in your symptoms and you might be able to find an answer. So that's also why many more people are now finding out about what's actually going on. Plus now, people are talking about it. There's books about it, and many people are more educated about ADHD.
Absolutely. What are some of the misconceptions that you've heard that people have about ADHD as well as PMDD?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because with ADHD, for example, I personally thought ADHD is only the little boy that can't sit still in the classroom. And I think that many other listeners have the same picture in their head, because I'm a woman, I'm 35, I've completed uni, I work jobs, I'm a mom, my house is it's a little bit messy, but not very messy. Like, I'm living my life, I'm doing my passions, but it turns out that my brain is still wired differently. And then with regards to PMDD, there's some other misconceptions about there as well. And one of the things where, once again, I'm speaking from my own experience, is that I just thought it was a bad case of PMS. And I've also heard that women go to the doctor to get advice. And I said, oh, it's just bad PMS, or you need to manage your stress better. But now, since 2013, PMDD is actually an officially recognized condition, which is super helpful for many women now to get diagnosed and to get a treatment plan and to start healing and thriving.
How does PMDD impact a woman's health or her mental health?
In most cases, the two will go hand in hand. So PMDD, women can have physical symptoms, but also emotional symptoms. So it's much more severe. You can have swelling of the breasts, of entire body feeling sore, body aches and pains, nausea, vomiting. Emotionally and mentally, women can really suffer because of the hormonal drop that happens after you ovulate. So once you start entering that luteal phase, the change in hormonal levels is what affects, is what causes some of these symptoms to happen, especially if you also have ADHD. The symptoms get worse and worse because they amplify one another. Mental health is a really big one because, like I said, from my personal experience, I used to feel so depressed for 2 months of the year. So that's basically half your life that you feel that you can't function. I couldn't perform my job. I just couldn't work. I didn't have the drive. I would feel extremely lethargic. My family life definitely wasn't happy. My husband, unfortunately, suffered a lot from me being extremely cranky and just having no fuse. I would also really suffer with like puffy eyes and just having no patience, no drive, no interest in anything. I just didn't want to be here. I didn't have suicidal thoughts, even though some women do really have that, because they just feel there's no way out of the symptoms, which is really, really sad. But unfortunately, that's the truth. A lot of people just don't understand what's going on when women suffer from ADHD. They just think, oh, she's got her period again. That's always people say, but it goes much deeper than that. And it really affects the way that you feel, the way that you live your daily life.
For sure, something that is definitely misunderstood and not maybe taken seriously enough.
Yeah, exactly.
As I mentioned earlier, I love that you advocate for a holistic approach to dealing with the conditions associated with ADHD and PMDD. What are some practical strategies or tools that you would recommend to individuals dealing with this?
I'm just speaking from my own experience and something that I did, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not an ADHD specialist or a PMDD specialist, but I come to you from sharing my own journey. Even though it's anecdotal evidence, it's often very powerful to help other people, which is why I've written the book, in order to share my journey. And one of the first steps that I did was doing a DNA test, because we're all born with the DNA that we die with. We have the same DNA. Over time, if you make changes to your diet, your exercise, and your environment, those things can actually impact the way that some of the genes are expressed. So if it's within your budget, I would suggest do a DNA test, do a blood test, and speak to a healthcare provider that can assess those things, finding out the root cause. It's called functional medicine, where we get to the root of things. And that would be the first step. And then some of the other things, like for me, just having the knowledge and awareness and the diagnosis was for me so powerful, because all of a sudden I had something to hold on to. I had something to steer towards to, in the sense that, okay, I know what's happening now. I've been tracking my symptoms. So I've been tracking my symptoms. I've been tracking my cycle for probably 6 or 7 years now, where I would put in every month, I would put the symptoms in a diary. So this is a smart ring that tracks my activity, my steps, my sleep, as well as my body temperature and my cycle. So now with all this data and with wearable technology, including your Apple Watch or a Whoop, all this wearable technology has become so important in helping us understand ourselves better, because all of a sudden now I've realized, okay, once I've ovulated, I know that the difficult phase is going to come along with that. So there's basically 2 phases of dealing with the PMDD. And during the difficult phase, or during the luteal phase, the 2 weeks leading up to your period, it's all about dealing with what is. If you feel really depressed, if you feel really tired, what are some things that you can do? So for example, with depression, very important you speak to someone professionally. It's important to share that how you're feeling. But it's not something that came easy to me, because I wasn't taught how to communicate. I can speak, I can talk, I can hold a conversation. Talking about the way you feel and the way you experience things is very hard, especially if you don't know yourself exactly what's going on. So getting a diagnosis, doing DNA test and a blood test to see where your levels are at and what your actual biology is. Then you can look at supplementing correctly, which is something I started doing, because it turns out in my DNA test, there were a few findings that I needed to address. One of them was inflammation. Inflammation is a very important part, both in ADHD and PMDD. And once I started to address that inflammation with, for example, 4,000 milligrams of fish oils, that's when it started to feel a little bit more normal. That's when my puffy eyes started to become normal. That's when I started to think more clearly, because there's research out there that also shows that fish oils are very good for people with ADHD, both men and women and children as well, obviously to the correct dosage that's appropriate for each individual. But supplementing correctly is a very important thing. Even though you might be eating the healthiest, best diet there is, it's almost guaranteed that that diet is deficient of certain nutrients. And that's not because of the way you cook. That's not because of the way, you season the food. It's about the soil lacking in nutrients. And that's why it's so important to do those tests to see your unique deficiencies, so that you can start supplementing according to your unique genetic makeup.
When you say DNA test, is there like a specific DNA test you're referring to?
Yeah, so personally, I've done 3 DNA tests with a company called DNA Life. This is also something we offer at our clinic. There's 3 different tests. One is called a DNA core, looking at, I think it's 192 different genes. Then there's a DNA mind, really focusing on how things work in the mind with regards to addiction, inflammation, depression, and things like Alzheimer's. And then I also did a 3rd DNA test, which is about testing your hormones to see what actually happens in the body and what your genetic makeup is. And those 3 tests combined have been super powerful for me, because besides the inflammation factor that I found, I also learned about estrogen detoxification. So this is a process that happens in the body. And it turns out that my body is slightly differently wired. And therefore, I need to focus on supplementing with the right supplements in order to support my body. One of the most beautiful things is, as soon as I started to supplement correctly according to my genetic makeup, my symptoms started to feel better. The 3rd most important and interesting finding is something called the MTHFR gene. This is a gene that roughly about 40% of people have this gene mutation. And what that means, this is something that's the MTHFR gene affects methylation in the body. And methylation is something that happens, many, many times a day in our body. And it's a very important process. And what happens is that my body cannot absorb vitamin B correctly. because the gene is slightly different than what it's supposed to be. So what I'm doing instead is now I'm supplementing with a methylated version of vitamin B, or methylcobalamin or methylfolate. That's probably one of the simplest changes that women and men can start doing. And the thing is, you don't need a very expensive DNA test to do. If you struggle with some of the symptoms such as lack of focus, lack of energy, it might be worth to have a look at your multivitamin that you're taking and see if it's got the methylated version of vitamin B. Because all it means is that the methylated version, it's a version that's readily available to be absorbed by your body. So your body can actually use that vitamin B, versus previously when I was taking it, my body just couldn't process it, so it wouldn't do nothing for me. And that's why the change has been so powerful, because all of a sudden, the building blocks in my body are working correctly and things are starting to fall into place like Tetris.
Fascinating. We're living in an era where we can go and have this done. Lots of us have already done our DNA for ancestry. This is far more important, doing this kind of DNA, because it can help you, as you say, get down to the core of things, the base of things, why things are not working. And by doing a simple DNA test, you can quickly get to understand why things are not functioning as they should. So I think that is excellent advice. As you mentioned, to get a diagnosis, first of all, to do this DNA test. You also mentioned tracking our own body responses throughout the month, using tools, as you mentioned, the Aura Ring and the Whoop, and then supplementing correctly. So I think there's some really excellent tips that you've given us for this. I know we mentioned earlier on that your work emphasizes the importance of mindfulness and intentionality. So starting your day with purpose and ending it with affirmations. Can you share some daily practices or rituals our listeners can adopt to cultivate a more intentional life?
Yeah, absolutely. So mindfulness is not per se something that you practice. For us, mindfulness is a way of life. It's the way we approach things. And I think for me to learn about mindfulness has been so helpful in order for me to help manage my symptoms of ADHD and PMDD, because mindfulness is becoming aware of what's going on. If I ask you to become aware of your breath, then once you do that, you start to become aware of your breath. But prior to this, we were having a conversation and you were breathing anyway. But it's not until we start to pay focused attention to something that we become aware of what's going on. And that's something that's been very powerful. Many people can do that through, some people do it through prayer or exercise. Exercise actually is another very important part of managing ADHD and PMDD. And that's something that's part of my daily routine as well. So one of the things besides doing, the blood test, the DNA test, supplementing, eating a healthy diet, exercise plays a super important role in my life. Obviously, being a personal trainer and someone that's interested in health and fitness and longevity, it's something I live and breathe. But the most important thing that I found, once again, it's about personalized, targeted approaches that work for you. Because in my DNA test, I found out about my inflammation factor. And it turns out I have the IL-6 inflammation gene, which basically says I need a longer time to recover after my workouts. And once again, this is why it's so important to get personalized advice. And this is not just for the CEOs that run the companies. This is also for you and me in order to help live a healthier life where you can thrive. And it's not just if you have a health condition. Everyone can do a DNA test. We've even done DNA test on my 2-year-old. And that's not a blood prick. That was just a buccal swab, meaning a saliva test. Because once you know these things, you can start doing all those actions and intentionality in your life. So for example, when we wake up in the morning, we start the day with gratitude. We have water in the morning, filtered water, not from plastic, but from glass. And then we have our supplements. So our little one has her own supplements. Even though she's only 2.5, she has her own supplements, or just an oral liquid that she takes. After that, we have some time with our little birds. We've got 2 little budgies that we play with, or we do a little bit of movement, just, going by what we feel. Then we'll sit down and we'll have breakfast together. She goes off and does her thing. I focus on getting my work done. But things that we do together is movement. So after dinner every day, we go for a walk, because walking after dinner is a very nice way to relax, to aid digestion, to get some fresh air. And it's something that we've woven into our family rituals for us. And then every Sunday we have family day where we do an activity together. And what else we do is I don't go 24 hours without exercise. So I make sure every day I do my 10,000 steps. And that's something, once again, I use wearable technology to track where I'm up to. Both my Apple Watch as well as the Oura Ring help me track what I'm doing. I really work with timers as well. So when I work, I will set, this is called a Pomodoro technique. I will set a 25-minute timer. I'll focus on one task I need to do, and then I'll go outside for 5 minutes, do a quick walk around the block, and come back and get started on the next task.
Brilliant. I love that. The Pomodoro technique. Set 25 minutes, focus, and then take 5 minutes break and go and do something active. There was so much in what you've just said, so much that you shared with us. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. This conversation is so interesting. We could go on, but then the podcast would be too long. I'm happy you wrote the book. I love that your experiences helped you to discover what worked for you and that you didn't just keep this to yourself, that you've gone ahead and created a book for others to benefit from your experiences. So thank you for that. I would highly recommend our listeners to pick up your book and read that. Now we've come to the segment of our show where I'll ask you some rapid fire questions, our version of a game show. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
When's your favorite time to meditate?
Probably first thing in the morning when my little one is still asleep.
Which one best represents your personality, boxing or yoga?
I'd have to say both, but I can't pick both. Let's say the boxing.
If you could manifest anything instantly, what would it be?
Great health for everyone.
What is one affirmation you say to yourself every day?
I don't say this actually every day, but this is one that's super powerful for me, especially when I struggle with mood swings and depression. It is, "This too shall pass."
As someone who helps others unlock their full potential, what is the one message or lesson you hope listeners take away from your story or your work?
To listen to your intuition, never take no for an answer, and to get your own personalized results.
And what is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you get?
Walking. I walk 10,000 steps minimum every day.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for playing along. That was easy enough. Now we've come to our signature question about your green pill moment. If you could take the green pill and start over, would you go about things differently?
Interesting question, but the answer is actually no. Because as challenging as my life has been for the various stages of my life, everything is part of my life and part of my purpose, because I believe that the universe has given me what I need in order to find and then fulfill my purpose, in that help others. So everything that's happened with me, to me, as part of my life has led me to where I am now, stronger and better and able to help others in their struggles.
It makes sense. You learn from your experiences, and all those experiences are valuable. Well, thank you, Caroline, for joining me today on the Matrix Green Pill podcast and sharing your incredible journey, insights, and strategies for living a more intentional and abundant life. Your work in mindfulness, holistic health, and mental resilience is truly inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners have gained or will gain a lot from today's conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really good to have a conversation.
Before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you? And we'll also put this in the show notes.
Yeah, so my main Instagram account is Amazon Warrior AU. And this is my meditations one, where I've just started to share about ADHD and PMDD. So it's Amazon Warrior AU on Instagram. It's thehealingjourneybook.com. And on YouTube and Insight Timer and Spotify, you can find me under Meditations by Amazon Warrior.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, thank you for joining me today. I wish you all the very best, and I wish everything of the best for your new book as well.
Thanks again for having me.
To our audience, don't forget to check out Caroline's guided meditations on Spotify, YouTube, and Insight Timer, and keep an eye out for her upcoming book, The Healing Journey. It's bound to be a transformative resource for many. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would benefit from Caroline's story. Until next time, stay inspired, stay mindful, and keep exploring the green pill of growth and transformation.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.